Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today we're going to be kicking off our Combine videos with some offensive prospects to watch at the 2024 NFL Combine. So I've got 15 players for you today. We're going to talk about 3 players at each position. We're going through quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and offensive line. And then 2 days from now, we'll go through defense. So we'll hit interior defensive line, defensive end, outside linebacker, group those two together, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. So we're going to talk about 30 players all together. I'm trying to choose players I feel like have a lot to gain, have a lot to lose, players that kind of need to prove things, and then players just that I'm watching personally. Maybe some prospects for Jacksonville. So we got a nice variety of people we're going to talk about. And so we're going to start this off talking about quarterback. And I understand, obviously, Jacksonville's not drafting a quarterback early, right? We got ours. But I do want to prepare you guys for the entire combine. And I do think this is kind of important because this also factors in to what players go off the board early. And so we'll jump into the first one of those, J.J. McCarthy. I think that he has got a lot to gain and a lot to lose this week. A lot can happen for him because McCarthy has so much hype right now around his tools and what he could be at the NFL level from NFL people. Maybe not as much like fans. I mean, a lot of us are like, how in the hell is this guy going to go 6th overall or whatever is being talked about at the time? But that's just what we're hearing. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see if this is actually a legitimate thing, which I think it is. And then what do the NFL teams think of him at the end of the week when they finally get to go in person and watch him for the first time? So tons of things going on with J.J. McCarthy. And this does impact Jacksonville because you want to see where the players go. You want to see who's going to be on the board. And what we need to be rooting for as fans is for as many quarterbacks to go as possible early in this draft. There are a lot of players that are questionable as to whether they'll go before pick 17. McCarthy is still one, although I think he will. You got Bo Nix, and you got Michael Penix. So there's some names you just don't really know right now what's going to happen with them. But J.J. McCarthy, definitely the top guy I'm watching. I'm also going to watch Jaden Daniels a bit because I think for Daniels, this is a good opportunity for him to try to cement himself more into the conversation for 2. I think it's right now he's probably not the guy for Washington, but this is a good opportunity for him to go out to look like a really good quarterback, play consistent, and maybe earn himself a shot at going number 2 to the Washington Commanders rather than just being maybe the 3rd guy or even falling past 3 if, say, the Patriots want to go after Marvin Harrison Jr., which is very much a possibility. And then the final guy, Michael Penix Jr. And this isn't as much what he's going to do in drills for me. It's what we're going to hear about his injuries. Are teams scared? Or do they think that he's going to consistently have these issues in the NFL? Or is this just really terrible luck that it's just not really going to impact his future? And that he is going to be someone you can rely on. He's just an older prospect, and he'll be on the field. We're going to see where it falls in that range. And so he's definitely someone I'm going to watch. He's a personal favorite of mine as well. I mean, if we didn't have a quarterback in Jacksonville, I'd probably be rooting for him to come down here. But obviously, we're not looking at quarterback, but he's still someone I'm very much interested in. So that's the first position. Now we're going to talk about running back. And the first guy here, Audric Estime, he is really enticing to me. And I know the Jaguars just drafted Tank Bigsby last year. But when you have, so let's say this, if you have the opportunity to add someone like this, I think it would be a phenomenal option for the Jaguars, depending on where it is. I think the absolute earliest I could be okay with it is probably 96, which I think he should be gone well before then, if I'm going to be honest. But it is a deep draft class. Now, why am I saying all this about Estime, though? Estime has a lot of things that are exciting about him because he's a player who, when he enters the draft, he is in decimals, 20.6 years old. So he's going to turn 21, I think, like right when the season starts. Super young. You talk about the mileage on him. I think he had like 1 year that he started. It was this year, and he had 1,300 yards for Notre Dame. One of the highest totals of the running backs that we're talking about. And then you look at the way he plays, which is most important. It's not all about production at the college level all the time. He is a strong player, tons of strength, and he's pretty fast too. It's not his like top attribute, of course, speed is not, but he is a really strong player. You go look at pictures of this guy, he is just jacked. I mean, as jacked as you will find in a guy that age. So Estime, I'm going to watch him close because I think if he goes out, he just puts together like a really good overall performance where he's strong in every category. I think he has a shot to go as the first running back picked off the board. And if he's sitting there for Jacksonville, when we get close to day 3, I am absolutely considering pulling the trigger, even if we got ETN and Bigsby, because the value is just too immense at that point. Because this is the kind of guy that's probably going to play for a while. I mean, you got low mileage, you got a young player, and you've got someone who's strong. You're not going to worry about injuries with him. Just a ton to love about Audric Estime, one of my favorite players in this draft. I'll have to actually add him to my guys list on my draft board. I don't think I've done that yet. But the other two guys, Trey Benson, he's on this list for me because he's the number one guy on my board at this moment. And I think he needs to earn that spot because he could have a lot to lose from a guy like Audric Estime. You could even throw in like Marshawn Lloyd challenging for that just because of how well he did at the Senior Bowl, especially as a receiver. But I want to see Benson just look the part overall because to me, he feels like the most logical guy to go first. He just looks like he's one of those top running backs you find in the draft, although he's not thought of as that among all circles. But I think he deserves to be in that conversation. I think he could kind of solidify himself and pull away at the combine. Now, the final guy, Jonathan Brooks. This is for kind of a different reason. I think when I look at Brooks, what's so weird to me is that he's almost built more like a receiver than he's built like a running back. I'll actually pull up the numbers here just so I get the numbers right, what we know. And obviously this will get confirmed to us in a few days once the combine starts. But Jonathan Brooks comes in, he's supposed to be 6 foot and 207 pounds. When you hear those two numbers, what are you thinking of? Probably a wide receiver, right? So it's very enticing to me with his size that he's playing running back because I'd worry a little bit maybe about injuries with him. But I think if he can come in, he does well in the strength testing, and most importantly, if he excels in the receiving drills, if he looks really good, maybe we hear some of those conversations about him that we did with like Travis Etienne where they say, maybe we can kick him outside a little bit. Maybe he can play a little bit of receiver. And so I think that's where Brooks could kind of separate himself as being the top guy in this class that can go do it all. And so that's what I'd like to see from Jonathan Brooks. He's not super high on my board. I'll reevaluate after the combine and we'll see where he falls. But he's got a lot to earn here, I think. So let's talk about wide receiver. Got one of my favorite players here, and someone I've been waiting a while for the combine for, because I think that Troy Franklin has the opportunity to even potentially put himself as the wide receiver 4 after the combine. I don't think he can get into the top 3. I think that's too much to ask. I think that opportunity passed him during the regular season. But for me, right now, with where Troy Franklin measures out, give me a second, I got a cough. Troy Franklin is at a size like 187 where I probably have him in the slot. If he can get up to 195, around there, all of a sudden, the way I see him is I think, well, first of all, my comp for him is Calvin Ridley. I think he's very close in the way he plays. Super fast player, electric, can line up all over the place. Has a good frame, has a better frame than Calvin Ridley. That's the main difference. But someone who's a great route runner as well. And so, especially like if Ridley walks, Franklin goes high on my radar. But if Franklin can get up to like 195, which That's a little heavier than where like Calvin Ridley is right now. I think that's really good for him because then with Franklin, the only difference I really see as a prospect is just he has more size to play with. And he does pretty well on contested catches too. So I like all that about Troy Franklin. I think he's got a ton to work with. I just want to see him separate himself. Now for Xavier Worthy, it's our second guy here. He's actually, funny enough, if you didn't know this, when they asked him who his favorite wide receiver is or the guy he bases his game off the most, he actually said Calvin Ridley. So kind of on the same topic here. But Worthy, like Franklin, needs to show up bigger than where he is. Worthy is supposed to be 172 pounds. I think it would be really nice to see him get up to like at least 180. I'd really like that kind of size for him. I think that allows you to consider playing him outside. And that would put him on Jacksonville's radar. But I want to see him as well live up to the hype. 4-yard dash. Want him to show good route running. Want him to just look the part out there. Because I do think that there's a pretty good argument for him being high in the mix of these receivers. And he's kind of right now below that second tier of guys. We're talking about like Brian Thomas Jr., you throw in Franklin there as well, maybe even Keon Coleman. I mean, Xavier Legette might still be there. I don't know. He's kind of fallen off a little bit. But I think that Worthy can put himself back in that conversation after the combine. Final guy here, Keon Coleman. I think with Keon Coleman, the only thing I'm really watching is just, can I imagine this guy separating in the NFL? Does he have the speed? Does he look better as a route runner? Did we miss some things when we evaluate him? Those are my key concerns because I do not think this guy is a separator at all. If he can start doing that and he starts showing this at the combine, then I can start buying into the hype more. Because right now I'm kind of like right in the middle with him. So we'll see what happens with him. I hope he has a good week. I think he could be a riser from the combine. Now let's talk about tight end. It's our next position here. I think Brock Bowers, pretty clearly the guy to watch. He is miles above every other prospect at the position. I have also heard a lot of stuff recently about him looking like he's not really built for the position or he looks thin and all this stuff because of Super Bowl media week and being out there. I think it's kind of overblown. I don't really understand like why he's being pushed down boards so much right now. But I think that Bowers has a good opportunity out here to try to silence that criticism. Just look strong, look good, run good routes, just look the part. Prove to everyone, yes, this is a generational tight end. I mean, I already believe it. I don't think that's going to change after this week. But for his own projection to the NFL, I think it'd be really good to see him put in a good week. Now, I've got two other guys here. Very different things I'm looking at. For Barner, he's actually my tight end too right now. And it doesn't mean he's high on my board. He's not. I don't have a tight end, I think, even in the top 3 rounds, let alone top 100 after Brock Bowers. But Barner, when I watched him, he's a really good run blocker. He's really good in pass blocking department. He's good at all that. As a receiver, he does not have a lot of experience, but what I saw actually looked pretty solid, and I don't see a reason why he can't be good at that at the next level. And so I want to watch him really close during receiving drills, because if he does a really good job there and looks like someone with the capability to learn it at the next level, all of a sudden, we look at Barner as a developmental guy in the NFL with all the tools to be a starting tight end. And if he has that, well, now you're talking about maybe late day 2, early day 3 in the draft. And then Jaheim Bell is the final one. And it feels weird putting him down as a tight end because you look at his size, he's like 6'1", 6'2", I mean, he feels like more of a receiver as a player, and he is really big for a receiver. He's like supposed to be 244 pounds. So I kind of look at him as a transition at the next level. I think that he would be best maybe as like a big slot receiver where he can kind of trim down, maybe get close to like 230 and play there. I would really like to see that with him, but I want to see what people say about like him projecting a wide receiver. Do teams ask him about that? Is he lighter now? Is he heavier? We did see numbers at the Senior Bowl, but that's kind of what I'm looking at with him because I don't know what he is right now. There's a lot of questions about that. So, final position here, offensive line. This includes tackles, guards, and centers. But the first guy we're talking about is all 5 of them. It's Graham Barden. I rewatched his film recently. He is one of my guys in this draft. I'm really high on him. He just looks phenomenal as a player. Looks like he has things figured out. He's a good processor. He has every tool that you need. He's just not like a perfect prospect, right? When I look at him, he reminds me of like maybe just a little lesser of a version of Peter Skoronski, which that's not that bad, honestly. And we got to see like what arm length is. We got to see all these numbers because that will say a lot more about where he should project in the NFL. Because I think he has the ability to play tackle. Like I don't think he's a liability there at all. I think he's pretty good at it. But we have to see if Barden has maybe the arm length that teams are going to look for. If he doesn't, then you start asking yourself, should he go into guard? And maybe, is he a center? And I think he would be just a phenomenal center for the Jaguars. I think he'd be a fantastic fit there. I think you could probably move back for him a little bit as well. So he's a player I'm watching. I'd also like to see him get to maybe 320 for the combine. He's 314 according to Duke. So we'll see where he lands. But I would like to see him get a little bigger because he does have an imposer mentality. And I want to see him have the strength to back that up. He has plenty right now. He's fine at 314. A little more would be nice, especially if you're going to compete with guys like Jackson Powers Johnson who have your movement skills, but they're 334 pounds. So we're going to see where he really lands. And he's definitely high on my board. Might move a little bit, but I'd like to see what happens there. Tyler Guyton, he has to make this list because this is probably the guy who's going to steal the show. This is the inevitable rise for him because he's going to have the athletic traits, the physical traits to just stand out in all these drills. And I think the performance will impact Jacksonville a lot because he's already being speculated as a target. And why I say that is because we think we found some Trent Baalke burner account. It's confirmed picks from, 2 years ago? I think it predicted, like, even Chad Muma and, Trayvon Walker and Luke Fortner. It predicted 3 players coming to Jacksonville 2 months ahead of the draft. And they did. And on that same account, talks about guys like Tyler Guyton, Muhammad Kamara. So whether or not that's all true, I'm going to watch it because I do think that'll actually say a lot about whether that's actually a legit thing. And if you haven't heard about that whole thing, go check it out. It's funny. You'll find it on Twitter. And so Guyton, he's still going to be a guy to watch, even if that wasn't all true, because the skill's got to be developed, but all the traits are there. And there's a super high ceiling for him as a prospect. I think you could say some of the same things about maybe like Amarius Mims, if you wanted to throw him on this list, but I went with Guyton. And I wanted to throw on Cooper Beebe as my last guy. I want to talk about him because I think he's been an afterthought in this draft, which is really sad because you look at his film, you look at the way he's played. He is a phenomenal player. Like, he's just good at everything he does. I don't see clear issues with him. The thing that people just skip over him for is that he doesn't have some, like, crazy wow factor that he brings. And it's sad because he's a good player. Like, I would be okay taking him at pick 48. Would it be my top option? Maybe not, because I think you can get like a high level impact player if you find the right guy there. But BB is going to be a good starter in the NFL. He plays inside. He can even kick out to tackle. He can do a lot of different things. He's very versatile. Like, you can't tell me that that kind of player would not have a use on like 32 teams in the NFL. Like, he's going to do something to be really good for whoever picks him. And it would be great if Jacksonville does. But I want to watch him close, and I hope he has a good week so that he can finally get some notice and stop being overlooked so much for guys that didn't do even close to what he did at the college level, but they could at the next level, which doesn't mean anything unless they do. So those are my 15 guys for this. A lot of people I'm excited to watch on the offensive side of the ball. A lot of favorites in here too. And I think there's a good shot. You're looking at one of these positions, offensive line, wide receiver. We'll see. But definitely some exciting prospects. So that's all I've got today. 2 days from now, we'll put out our defense preview. So we'll talk about those positions and have some more players for you guys. But that's all I've got. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.